Hello, everyone, and welcome to People of Interest. People of Interest is a show premised on the idea that everyone has a story. I'm your host, Miguel Guanipa, and today I have a very special guest. His name is James Ormonde Staveley O'Carroll. James was arrested in November 21st, 2010 with 4,500 pounds of Jamaican ganja on an 80 feet, is it? 80
Yes.
foot schooner. Thank you very much for joining me, James.
Yes.
So
Glad to be here.
glad to have you. Well, the first question I have, because I don't know if everybody knows what ganja is. What is ganja? What is it? What does that mean? I know because you
Ganja
told me.
is
but-
what they call the cannabis that's grown in
Yeah.
Jamaica.
Mhm.
And this cannabis was grown in the sunshine by people who consider it a sacred herb and are not enslaved, although the police and the army comes by to shake them down and bust them occasionally, but it's not tightly controlled by human domination systems like the cartels and the government in
Right.
Mexico. But ganja is what the Jamaicans call cannabis, marijuana.
So how did you end up with 45 pounds of ganja on a 80 foot?
4,500 pounds.
4,500 pounds of ganja
Well,
on a schooner.
The schooner is Sarah Moira. She's 80 feet on deck. Her paper said she's 78.9, but she measures 80 foot on deck.
Yeah.
100-ton schooner, American coasting. Well, she draws about 9 feet. A little, not really like a coasting schooner, American schooner.
Yeah.
The type, although she had that's a type at that size, right? She had a mass of approaching equal height.
Okay.
So,
you don't want to
but-
talk. You don't want to use terms that most people don't understand.
Okay.
Tell me simply why
but
were you
the
there?
way
Yeah.
I was trying to bring back working sail. I'm an environmental activist. I love big sailboats, and because of the U.S. war on cannabis, the war on weed, drug war in the Caribbean, despite the fact that the CARICOM trading bloc should make inter-island transportation by wind-powered vessels, it should be feasible again. And I remember as a young man when there were island schooners and when there was more freedom to travel between the islands with less regulation and so
Right.
forth. But CARICOM should have made it work. But because of the war on drugs, there's a shakedown factor implied. Like just getting the boats, even finding out what would be required to have a commercial vessel working inter-island was impossible. Because Jamaica supplies so much ganja to that area, to the Caribbean area, very little makes it up here actually at this point.
Yeah. So we have an hour. You know.
The drug war implies
Yeah.
a shakedown factor. In other words, everybody has to be bribed, and because the way they look at it, they're giving you a franchise to smuggle the weed, carry weed inter-island, and not coming up here because once a vessel checks in down there, it's people who have done it, gone from the Caribbean or Jamaica up here, it's fraught with, if you have a seed on the boat, they can seize your vessel, and there's huge penalties. But mangoes won't pay the freight, regular produce, because there is a system, and it depends on fossil fuel and petroleum, and even though 100-ton vessel, 140, 50-ton vessel would be more efficient for inter-island transportation rather than the the large vessels that carry containers that typically go into Puerto Rico and then they go inter-island from
Right.
there. It's because the hidden cost to the environment is not reflected in the price of the fossil fuel, and it's because a system that is in place currently, like all such systems, is not is not designed to allow usurpers to come in and, displace it.
Yeah.
The inter-island schooners and they were small and kind of a funky little fleet and flotilla of vessels that were built down there, converted vessels. Some of them depended a lot on power, and some had fancier props when they could get them. But they went out of business, and the CARICOM should have made it where inter-island sail-powered vessels could and should be welcome, but, well, I might have been a little bit ahead of the curve with my, I had 4 vessels in 100, 150 ton range, 2 80-footers and 2 85-footers.
Yeah.
Sarah Moira's round bilge with a traditional schooner shape, tumble home and the schooner stern. Very attractive boat, and the most yachty of my vessels. The others were hard chine vessels, and the 4 of my large vessels were steel. But I like big sailboats, and I loaded a couple of long tons of ganja on Sarah Moira because money is the mother's milk of big sailing vessels, and it's also the mother's milk of getting into a system that's unfriendly to you, because you're going to be shaken down. In fact, I was told that I'm either going to be shaken down, I'll be either smuggling for the cops, and they're inclined to smuggle things of high value and nastier things than ganja, or I'll be killed or incarcerated.
So what were you?
So I consider it, what I was doing,
Yeah.
direct action. I was doing my best for everybody. I love big sailboats, but I was working very hard to build these vessels.
Yeah.
And they were prototypes, and they had folding props, and they were purpose-built vessels of a certain size, and would have been very much what this planet and what that area could use. And if they succeeded, of course, more of that sort of thing would follow.
Yeah.
But I can't guarantee results. I have a spiritual practice that's very important to me, and I just do my best and try to do the right thing as I see it. And it looks to me, for instance, if you look at where we're at now in terms of this biosphere, read Bill McKibben's book, Falter. Just in my few decades on the planet, I'm 68 years old, I've seen dramatic climate change. I love big sailboats. It seems like the obvious thing to do, the right thing to do. So I loaded a couple of long tons of ganja on my boat. And, I wouldn't ride on with the load in order to bust people and stay rich, or, have a few big vessels. Because if I do something like that, that's how you actually get it done, if you can do that sort of thing. I'm not built to do that sort of thing. I don't want to judge those who do, but I didn't ride on with the load, so I was busted. What they say in South Mississippi is, you ride on or you get rolled over.
So you were arrested right there on the spot, and where exactly were you stopped and arrested?
I was arrested coming into New Orleans.
New Orleans.
And they brought me back to South Mississippi.
So what happened from then on? Like, what did they do?
Well, I was infiltrated. The guy who set me up did it because he had been caught in a sting by the feds,
Yeah.
by the government, and um, he set me up to fix that, and it did fix it for a minute. But
Yeah.
you know, a guy who does that has to make sure that he is not vulnerable to them. I mean, they'll give you a number, and you know, they'll say you're an agent for this time if you want to do that kind of thing. But a lot of times it's informal, and the person who does that is vulnerable to them coming back against him because they know exactly the sort of person he is, and they'll go right after him.
Yeah.
So they took me to South Mississippi. I talked to the police for a while. We chatted. I exonerated everybody that they mentioned while we were chatting because I had a containerized, the load was containerized, but I was overloaded because I was being set up, and so I had to leave some on the vessel, which made the container system pointless, really, because really the man wants to get that load off of the boat and to a safe house,
So you
the
were.
so-called stash house.
Yeah.
But because I was overloaded, I couldn't do that, and any one of those guys in South Mississippi would have known what was going on, and I didn't because I thought the guy who loaded me was my friend.
Okay. So kind of
Yeah.
turned you in, like.
But I've got to be grateful for the challenges of this life, so I did my time, and it started in Mississippi, but I did 30 months of in transit in county jails. A lot of people call that diesel therapy, and a person can change his mind. Maybe he'll remember something and call a prosecutor. He might pretend he's talking to his mama when he calls the prosecutor and say, "Oh, you know what? I can help you guys." Especially, if they send him to a place with no medical care, and he's got medical issues.
So how long were you?
How
long were you in prison in total? Like?
For like I needed skin care. I 9 years,
9 years.
1 month and change.
So that was a good bit of your life then. A good 9 years.
Yeah, significant, but it was very educational and very educational.
Yeah.
It was like psychology and sociology experiment, very visceral. It also helped. My father was a British commando, and he was captured, and he had a bumpy ride after he was captured, and it helped me understand things about him and his life and other people that that I know. Most people who are in prison in the U.S., I think they go to camps. And prison camps are a lot different than a low or a medium. And see, I've been to a low and a medium.
Low security, you mean?
Yeah, low security.
Yeah.
Low security is not really low security. I mean, you're not going anywhere. Now, camp, they don't have a lot of fences and barbed wire around it. But the medium I was at, actually, that was where I played in rock and roll bands with bank robbers mostly. There was one weed guy, a transpo guy, who was a trucker. But it wasn't, because I didn't get what they call a 5K 1.1 letter, which is a letter from the prosecutor asking the government to diminish your sentence, cut your time substantially, and they will. And because I didn't get a Rule 35, because I've got what they call in prison good paperwork, very good paperwork, in terms of I didn't get my time cut, and the reason it's possible to talk about it in rather plain terms
Yeah.
is because so many people plead guilty to crimes they didn't do. This is what Judge Gleason of the Second Circuit blithely referred to as the innocence problem, and quickly dismissed it. But I've seen a lot of people plead out the stuff they didn't do, and it's even the government will make sure if you want to be helpful, and they do not consider exonerating people being helpful, even if it's true that those people are innocent. Your word is only worth something to the government if it incriminates others. And with U.S. conspiracy laws, like U.S. versus Steve Fosnot, you can see one person got Steve like 25 or 30 years, F-A-U-S-N-A-U-G-H-T, Stephen Fosnot. Even though the principal in that alleged conspiracy exonerated Steve twice under oath in front of a jury, Steve got a lot of time. It really only takes one person, and that person was paid with leniency. It's a blood trade. So guys like this kid Twin in South Mississippi, fine young man, smiling face, and just a happy person, just a lovely person. He pled out to cocaine conspiracy he had nothing to do with, got 10 years in prison. I discussed it with him at length, and because I saw him when I was passing through Canaan one time, and he says it's better to do 10 years for a crime you didn't commit than 35 or 40. Typically, according to Human Rights Watch, Jamie Fellner, who crunched the numbers for 2012, the year I was sentenced, typically the trial penalty is a factor of 3. In other words, in Twin, figuring he's a black man in South Mississippi, he's going to get an extra 5 or an extra 10. Jamie Fellner wrote a paper called An Offer You Cannot Refuse, How U.S. Federal Prosecutors Force Drug Defendants to Plead Guilty. 97% of all defendants in 2012 accepted a priori guilt, pled guilty without due process in return for what is called leniency in 2012. Of the 3% who went to trial, most of whom I would guess were innocent. 87% of them were convicted, and they typically got 3 times the incarceration that they would have got if they accepted a priori guilt.
Right.
And that's a very simple equation, and it should make it plain to every federal judge on the bench that he's sentencing men, but they have to say, they cannot tell their lawyer, I'm pleading guilty to a crime I didn't commit, because then the lawyer can't give them, then they'll have to do 30 or 35 or 40 instead of the 10 piece. So the judges ceded their authority to the prosecutors. They accepted, as soon as prosecutors are allowed to negotiate for a priori acceptance of guilt, as Judge Young, First Circuit, in Berthoff's Statement of Reasons, as Judge Young points out, it implies charge bargaining and a fraud on the court. And innocent men plead. That was in a case called Berthoff. I think that was from late 80s or 90s. Judge Young.
Okay, let's turn the corner a little bit for a second.
Okay.
Because you could load the entire program with all these things that a lot of people are not going to
I've seen a lot of guys plead
understand.
guilty to crimes they didn't do.
Yep.
America doesn't want to hear about it.
Let's
It's not like on TV.
Yeah.
People betray they betray their friends, their family,
Yeah.
and on TV it looks like, oh, they're going to come after you. No. very rare as any. There's camp. The vast majority of the guys in prison camp
All right.
betrayed people. Nobody comes after them. They get out and they go. They go back to the same town where they betrayed all kinds of people.
All right.
Anybody says boo, the feds are on them like white on rice.
Let's turn the corner to talk about you now, which is what the show is about. I want to know a little bit about you and the James.
Yeah. Well, I wrote a
Ormonde
bunch
James.
of songs.
You wrote a bunch of songs, but let me ask you, where did you grow up, James?
I'm an immigrant from Ireland, and
You came from Ireland?
Ireland, yes.
You were born in Ireland?
I was born in Dublin.
Dublin. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yep. And I was 8 years old when we emigrated to the U.S. I came over here on the Queen Mary.
Yeah.
My father's a British commando, and he saw a lot of action and wrote a letter to the widow of his commanding officer, and he managed to get the British government to send him to some fancy schools and Trinity College in Dublin.
Yeah.
And he sent my mother to Trinity College. They both became medical doctors. And I have a hyphenated last name because my mother's family on her father's side, her father was supposed to be the Lord of Glenduff, and he married an Irish girl and was disinherited and helped the Irish during the Troubles. So my background is fraught with all the effects of all the wars, the class wars, World War II, World War One, from the old country, from the old world, and my parents took all their tests and basic sciences and everything all over again, and got their licenses to practice here, but we moved to Oklahoma, and I basically grew up on a ranch in Oklahoma.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I've got an older sister.
Yeah.
And is about a year and a half older, a little more than a year older than me. I had a younger sister who died of a glioblastoma brain tumor when she was 20 and I was 21. And then I've got a brother who's 4 years younger than me. He's an attorney, and I've got another brother who's Dr. Kevin Staveley O'Carroll, who's a medical doctor and PhD and does cancer research and runs a surgery.
So did they all come from Dublin, or were you?
He was Kevin, and my sister Kathleen. She's also a medical doctor.
Yeah.
Dr. Reeves. They were born in the U.S. in Oklahoma.
Right. Where are they now?
My older sister, myself, my younger sister, who middle sister, Marguerite, who passed away, and my brother Richard, the attorney, were born in the U.S. Born in Ireland. The two youngest, Kevin and Kathleen, were born in the U.S., in Oklahoma.
So what are the things that, like, you are 67 now?
68.
68.
Yeah, I'll be 69 next month.
If you look back, tell me something that in your life was a pivotal moment that changed your life dramatically from who you were before, and then.
Okay, that's an excellent question, Miguel.
Okay.
That's an excellent question. I was in a gale at Sancta Marquesa in about the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean and it looked to me like 100%. It looked to me like for sure we're going down. It's going to be dead. And it's like this. If I feel obliged to sail into a hurricane, and I have, I'd never seen the eye wall of, I saw the eye wall of that system. It wasn't hurricane force, I don't think. It was force 10, maybe a little more. force 10, a little more maybe, but it's not like some hurricanes I've been out there with and felt like I had to sail into them just because I was in a hurry or going somewhere or something.
Yeah.
And so if I say what I used to take up until that, if I say what I thought was a prayer, oh Lord, make that hurricane veer to the north. That's not a prayer, that's idolatry. That's like having a goal or an idol, which is a certain result, or a hurricane going a certain direction.
Yeah.
It's not a prayer. But when you're in the hurricane and looks like 100% sure you're going down, and you think about your life and you say, it's been a beautiful life.
Yeah.
And thank you, Lord. That's a prayer. If you say, thank you, Lord, see you soon, which I did, I had a revelation of God. Now, in that same year, I had a remission, that later in that summer, remission of malignancy. That was in '84. Instant remission, well, over the course of 3 days, which I had a remission of a biopsied malignancy. My skin's kind of sun damaged, so I didn't wear a hat when I was a kid in Oklahoma. I should have, but I'd done a lot of sailing, worked outside my whole life. So I had a revelation of God. And people might think, oh, that guy's a nut or whatever. But, or how do you know that was real? This is real.
Yeah.
You know, that was real.
Yeah.
This isn't real. This is a dream.
What was his
As the
revelation?
Eastern mystical tradition and real Christianity and everybody, as a Christian scientist.
Yeah, but what was his revelation? What happened?
It's to tell you the truth, and I have written about it quite a bit. It was beyond words, but everything was very beautiful, and it moved just big old. Even though we're getting buried under big waves that, you know, like I'd just be holding on to the wheel, and the whole boat's trembling, and I'm waiting for her to rise, and I figure the companionway is going to collapse under these waves for sure. You got a belt-driven Jabsco just trying to keep her afloat, and it's a bilge pump, and I gave one of my crew members my last pair of dry thermal underwear. I told them where they were.
In the midst of the storm?
The reason I mention that, because whether that might have had something to do with what happened, but because I had a revelation of God.
Yeah.
And to me, I've got a BA in philosophy. I was always on the honor roll except for my first semester. And because I took it seriously, I didn't really take it seriously. I was interested in the material, and I read the material, I wrote my papers.
Yeah.
And I should have taken my education more seriously, but I took it sufficiently seriously and when I started putting names and quantifying, thinking, I knew it was an experience of God, but the experience escaped from me when I started trying to analyze and put names on, but it was the beauty, every breath was, everything was, it was God. It was an experience of God.
Yeah.
An experience of pure love on the North Atlantic in a wooden sailboat. It was gorgeous, doing what she does. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And I knew, one of the things I knew, there's no death, there's no danger. There's only beauty. It was an experience of God. And that, even though it didn't, even though I didn't really integrate the implications of that into my life
Mm-hmm.
is as quickly as I should have in retrospect. But that's a judgment, making after the fact and so
Yeah,
forth.
yeah.
It's, it wasn't until the late 90s when I was obliged to be realistic about my bad habit, drinking beer and smoking cigarettes, and how insane and irresponsible that was. And it wasn't until I got, it wasn't until I faced certain other personal challenges and made some dramatic changes in my life that I got back to philosophy and having a regular spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm.
And currently I read A Course in Miracles every day, which I consider, if to put it in a context, I would say it would be in the rationalist tradition, in the tradition of Protagoras, Zeno, Plato, the Neoplatonists, Berkeley, Bishop Berkeley, Immanuel Kant, and various other some deist existentialists. But it is, to me, the gnosis, the truth. So that's a philosophy book I read because it follows out the implications of that experience I had. I didn't follow it out, and I didn't have a practice for a long time. But, for instance, my experience of being incarcerated for 9 years, or a little over 9 years, and it would have been a lot more if the Obama administration sentencing commission hadn't knocked 32 months off my sentence, which I got 32 months just for being a captain. And in reality, I've got 10 years for it, but depending on how you look at it,
So let's go back a little bit. Let's step back a little bit. This experience that you had of God, but
oh yeah.
Do you have what did this tell you anything about what the character of God is like? This experience you've seen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What did he tell you?
Yes. Man, that's a great question. That's a great question, Miguel. That's a great question. That is a great question. Then because it's God is pure love, and no fear in there. Because typically, I notice people interpret Genesis, for instance, which I've written quite a few songs about that. They interpret Genesis, the first book of the Old Testament, to indicate we should worship a vicious, retaliative, withholding God that punishes us, or our forebears, us. And in reality, or a more sensible interpretation of that first book of the Old Testament would be taking note of the fact, before all that happens, it says Adam fell into, or was cast into, that's a word a deep sleep. A deep sleep.
Yeah.
So, this is the dream. This is the a world of human domination systems, a collapsing biosphere. I just assume I manifest to, collapsing biosphere, a world on the brink, to like this karmic challenge is something I have to embrace, like getting some time for cannabis, something I have to learn from, and I have learned from it, and things that have been happening lately make it very clear to me just how much I have learned from the experience, and the nature, as Einstein said, God is subtle, but not malicious.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the nature of God. There is no vicious, retaliative withholding God. God is love and abundance.
Mm.
Yeah, that was an excellent question, Miguel.
That's,
that was
well, because I'm interested in some of these
yeah,
experiences,
yeah,
but
yeah. No, that was
no,
a,
no,
that
that,
was a, no, because, um, I was raised,
yeah, how
I
were
was
you
an
raised?
altar
In,
boy, I was
yeah, so
raised
you raised Catholic?
Catholic.
Okay.
I became, when I started studying philosophy, and I was thinking about philosophical things when I was a kid. Father Keating, who's a nice Irish priest, he said, he told my folks when I was 13 to get me a copy of Summa Theologia
Mm-hmm.
by St. Thomas
Aquinas?
Aquinas.
Yeah.
Basically a rehash of Aristotle, I think. But
Mm.
I thought I was smarter than Aquinas and Aristotle. But I didn't think I was smarter than Plato when I came across him. And I thought Berkeley and Kant, I read Kant's Critique of Pure Reason,
Mm.
and I thought, oh yeah. And that's kind of where like A Course in Miracles starts. If you read Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, the first part of A Course in Miracles, the text, is kind of a dense philosophical treatise. The narrator is Yashu,
Mm-hmm.
the boat builder of Capernaum,
Yeah.
aka Jesus in the Greek.
That's from the.
So that's what I base my spiritual practice on,
Mm.
and I'm having a life, Miguel, and I have every confidence that all I have to do is do my best and realize I cannot guarantee every result, and I cannot judge um, anybody or really anything. And if I adduce reasons to condemn this world because of um, the bureaucratic shadow empires that are, controlling everybody, human domination systems, all. If I make a case to condemn the world for that,
Mm-hmm.
it's a mistake. It's a mistake because no matter how fraught it seems, the challenge and answering the challenge and staying in the spirit to navigate through these challenging circumstances, that's the point. Whether so if I change the way I look at the world looks different, is what I've found.
Mm.
And it looks, if I think it's a sacrifice to be me, it's I'm going to be afraid or condemn God, or
Mm-hmm.
that's basically the dream of Genesis, that God's a withholding, retaliative, vicious entity
Mm-hmm.
that placed us here so that we could suffer. That's not true. As the Four Noble Truths in the Buddhist tradition, that life is suffering, and that all of that is, yeah, you can step off the wheel of suffering, and by following the Eightfold Path, these numbers are like, always choose love as the basic. God is love. There is no fear. Fear makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
But this bundle of perceptions that I consider to be my body is something I'm attached to in a way that, like, fear comes up, and I have to deal with it. These challenges, that's the challenge of it. Being thrown into the hole in South Mississippi, getting back to your question,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody else gets thrown right into the with the general population in the jail, which is like an industrial dungeon. It's horrible. But they put me in a nasty little hole. They put me in a hole where they detox the meth addicts, the stench,
Mm-hmm.
the stench was ugly. It was a little box. I came right off the ocean and right into a little concrete box
Mm-hmm.
with a teeny little. But my spiritual practice is I have no strength whatsoever, but my spiritual practice avails me of, sustains me in whatever circumstances.
Well, when you look back in life, do you have a particular person that you look up to and you think this person was really
Oh, yeah,
influential in my
No,
life?
no.
Who would that be?
Oh, well,
But
the
somebody that you know
master,
personally.
the boat builder of Capernaum, of course.
Oh,
But my mother and my father were great. My brothers and sisters were great. And all the kids I grew up with, they're great. Everybody's been really, even um, even my judge, who I was very rough on, and at sentencing, I said, please don't roll your eyes when I'm speaking to you.
he said that?
And I said that.
Oh, you
Eh,
said that.
but and I did a lot worse than that too. But he gave me the 32 months off he was supposed to give me because I was generally polite. He doesn't want to believe that he's sentencing men to decades in prison for crimes they didn't commit.
Mm-hmm.
But the judges ceded their power to the prosecutors and allowed prosecutors illegally, it was plainly unlawful, to negotiate for a priori acceptance of guilt.
All right,
Anybody can plead guilty.
let's not go down that
Okay,
road.
okay, okay.
But
Yeah,
it's something that you
No,
can-
you're right. You're
but
right.
it's something that you
No,
actually-
I mean the master, all the philosophical, the great writers,
Yeah.
the great artists. Art changes everything. The Beatles changed
So
everything.
you have a lot of influences in your life.
Yeah. But I mean,
What's something that you can look at and say, this is not something that I would do again. If I had a chance to do it again, I wouldn't do it. What would that be?
oh, drinking beer and smoking cigarettes.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Well, you
really.
did that for a little bit.
No, I did. I did that too
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
Cigarettes were really hard to quit, but I quit.
What about a thing that you wish
But-
you had a second chance to do, but not sure whether it's going
Oh.
to come back or not?
Oh, well, I've, I, I think treating a woman callously
Mm-hmm.
or being hurting a woman's feelings is a terrible thing to do because women are very brave.
Yeah.
They bear children. I think women are great, and I was kind of a heedless whelp as a youngster, as I noted in one or two songs. I wrote a song for my first real girlfriend, and it was a huge hit. The guys really liked it at Fort Devens.
Yeah.
But it was about doing well. Yeah, I think that's probably.
Is this a
I don't-
specific relationship that you're talking about? A woman that you didn't treat
Oh
well? Or?
well, I think any relationship. I think that's the most. That's probably when I look back on my life. Those are the mistakes that I think are the most serious mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I'd been a better son to my mother, or a better son to my father, a better brother, but I think in our intimate relationships with our significant others that's where all the war comes from on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Something I've written about, but because is but yeah, there. There's a lot of art and music and so on and so forth about. I've done a lot of thinking about it though. One of the things about incarceration is it produces mass incarceration produces misogyny and racism of in a scale that is unfathomable to somebody who hasn't been through it. It's
right, but
no,
I want to stay with you.
yeah, but anyway,
I don't
those
want you to trail off into
yeah,
philosophical.
okay,
We're talking about you, and I want you to tell me
that's
personally what
probably.
it is that.
I mean, looking back on my life, I have to remind myself that I'm not able to judge myself at any other moment other than right now, and I just have to choose what I'm doing right this minute.
So, what would you like to have a second chance to do then?
It will anything that I've made a mistake with, I will have a second chance to do it. That's the way
You will?
God works. Yeah.
Okay.
Not that very. It'll, as they say, what you resist will persist in terms of our karmic challenges. In other words, my soul will be. I'll be dissatisfied with the result until I meet every karmic challenge in a way that with the wisdom of my larger self is until a way that's appropriate, loving, and godly.
So you were married once, right?
I'm married twice.
You married twice. Okay.
Divorced once.
Okay.
But I haven't seen my wife since 2014.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's still around, or?
She's over on the vineyard. I haven't seen her yet. I don't want to press her or anything.
Yeah.
Hi, Nancy.
All right.
I'm going to tell everybody hi.
Well, this is what I'm saying right now. Like we only have a few minutes, so now I want to give you an opportunity. Whether it's something that you want to say, or in terms of whatever, whether it's a message or wait a minute. Let me tell you, or whether it's a desire that you have in your heart, or whether it's a plea for grace or mercy or forgiveness or anything. This is your opportunity, so I want you can look at the camera and speak to whoever may stumble upon this TV show, and this is your chance, and then we'll
okay.
go right ahead. Feel free to say whatever you need to say. Feel you need to say.
Well,
in the next 4 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The rhetorical tricks that have been used to subvert the letter of the law, the Bill of Rights, and are obvious and very simple, easily set forth for what they are, and anybody who's interested should look into it. Even though most people cannot articulate the nonsense or why it's nonsense.
All right, let me change the question.
What
is your message?
The legal profession certainly can, but I've set it forth in plain terms, and
I'll give you another chance to say something else. What is your message to humanity?
Okay, this, as Bill McKibben points out, this biosphere is collapsing. But hi, Kate, that's my daughter who says this. I said, well, I asked her about grandchildren, and she says this world is burning and melting.
Yeah,
and she has a point there, and the world is burning and melting. So I would advise anybody who cares to stand up. It's no sacrifice. Let me say this. It's not really a sacrifice. It looks like, in a world where you don't stand up, like a person who does stand up takes a terrible beating. But in reality, to find out, because the subjectivity principle is, extant as you can't tell without doing it. You got to try it for yourself, and if you try doing the right thing, whether it's giving your friend the apple that's not not bruised and keeping the bruised apple for yourself, or whether it's like the boat builder of Capernaum, who's running the money changers out of the temple and so forth. Whatever you do, insofar as you can do it, I think you'll be glad you did. If you try it, whether it's small or large, you don't have to break any laws. I advise you to be very careful of the law.
So we're almost out of time, so I'm going to give you another chance for something else. I want you to speak a quick message to the people that you love out there. Go ahead.
Always choose love. I'm fine. I'm doing fine. I love everybody. I'm grateful for my life. And thank you, Miguel.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. And I'll hope you see you next time when the next person comes and shares their story. Now,